Christian missionaries are called to evangelize people of every tribe and tongue and nation. Tonight, we'll meet two Jesuits who are doing just that in South Dakota. So please stay with us. Thank you. Thank you very much and welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa and welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. Our guests tonight are following in the footsteps of many Jesuits who came before them as they walk a hard but fruitful road to bring the good news to the Lakota Sioux Indians of South Dakota. Please welcome Father John Hatcher, S.J., and Mr. Tom Olsen, S.J.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Welcome. You know, a lot of times people are confused when they meet a young Jesuit and he's Mr., but you are a Jesuit scholastic. And so you have your first vows, but you have not been ordained yet.
That is correct.
Right.
So I'm in a period of formation known as Regency, and it's during Regency that a Jesuit in formation spends time working in a real Jesuit apostolate to gain real-world ministerial experience before going to theology.
Right. And so that's an important part of our formation.
Absolutely. It makes us men in but not of the world, and so I'm very pleased to be spending these formative years with Father Hatcher at St. Francis Mission. And
Father Hatcher, you have been at St. Francis Mission on the Redbud Reservation for how many years?
I've been on the mission there for 8 years. 8 years. But I've been working in South Dakota with the native people there for 38 years.
38 years. That's
yes.
A good long time.
It is. Seems like yesterday.
Yeah, well
but here we are.
Yeah, well, it goes by faster the older we get, doesn't it?
I know. It's terrible.
Well, that's life. One of the things, though, is that your 38 years is part of a much longer tradition. How long have the Jesuits been in the missions in South Dakota?
The Jesuits went there in 1886. And they went at the invitation of two of the great chiefs, Spotted Tail and Red Cloud.
Okay.
And that's how, they went to see President Hayes and asked to have the black robes. The Jesuits opened schools there, and we were permitted to come on the reservation there.
All right.
We've been there ever since.
Yeah, President Grant did not allow the Catholics.
Well, I don't want to say necessarily his, but his administration did. Because the government had regulated what religions would be assigned to each reservation.
Okay.
And the Episcopalians were assigned to those reservations in South Dakota.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that the conscience of the Indians was already moving towards a Catholic formation.
Oh yeah, you see, those chiefs had met Father DeSmet when he went through there on his way to the Flathead reservations. Mm-hmm. And he had actually baptized some Sioux people then. And so they knew the reputation of Father DeSmet, and they knew the reputation of the Jesuits as being teachers, and that's how they insisted we come out.
Now, one of the problems is that the Redbud Reservation is in the second poorest county in the United States. And there's just tremendous poverty. You know, when we talk about poverty in our big cities, it's really, comparatively speaking, well off because it's so poor there. And there are a variety of other problems associated with the situation. Tell us a little bit about what some of those difficulties are in the community.
Well, the poverty situation is large and complicated by the fact because it's a remote reservation. And there are a lot of people, there are 20,000 people on that reservation. The unemployment rate runs about 80%. High alcohol and drug use. So you have second and third and fourth generation families affected by alcoholism. And we also have a one of the highest suicide rates in the country for young people. So, you know, there's a lot of bad news about reservations. We can recount that a lot. It's a very difficult situation. On the other hand, there's some very good people there who want to make a difference and want to change. And our thrust of our missionary activity has been to change the way we do mission so that we would emphasize training people to be leaders, both in the church and in the community. And we would also re-emphasize and help to strengthen their culture and their language, with the hope that over a period of time, that dysfunction that I mentioned could be overcome by the people themselves.
One of the things that we had talked about, you know, before the program, is how important Pope John Paul's vision and Pope Paul VI's vision for mission is for what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's not only just for Rosebud. I think it's for the way we would do missionary activity for Native people throughout the United States. One of the criticisms that can be leveled at missionary activity in the past with Native people is that we did not create a church. And
what do you mean by create a church?
We did not make it possible that people would then become a self-sustaining Catholic community and could then send missionaries to other parts of the world. I mean, that's the pattern of the church. You know, you're supposed to go, bring the gospel, help people be educated in the faith, and then they become missionaries. Well, that got short-circuited somehow. And what we need to do now is address that problem and make it possible for a church to be created on these reservations. So, the Second Vatican Council's document on missionary activity, on the laity, are two very important documents. Pope Paul VI's letter on evangelization, John Paul II's encyclical on evangelization, are extremely important in setting the table for how we would change missionary work and make it effective, so that in 25 years we would actually have Native priests and sisters and Native lay leaders who can make a difference in those communities. And that's where we want to go. And they had great vision for that. I mean, John Paul II was excellent in terms of his care for indigenous peoples and wanting to see those indigenous churches grow. And I think the present Holy Father follows. And become
self-sustaining churches.
Yes, and then they become missionary churches.
Right.
That's the important piece.
Because there are many other areas that need missions as well as the Dakotas. Tell us a little bit about, because one of the things that you do a lot of is fundraising for the mission as part of your work. And you're familiar with a lot of the actual activities that are going on. Tell us a little bit about some of those projects that are taking place at the reservation and in the mission.
One of the attributes of the mission that drew me to the mission as a young Jesuit a few years ago was Father Hatcher's and the mission's emphasis on creating a truly native and enculturated church. Enculturation is such a huge part of our Catholicism. Right. Indeed, we could say this, the second person of the Trinity enculturated into a certain time and place in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. And so to continue along that enculturation route is precisely what St. Francis' mission is all about. But part of what enculturation would mean then is to make people and to help people to become leaders in their own right and to help them to actually lead the church themselves. And it's through our various programs that we are actually enabling people to do just that, to take personal responsibility for their own lives, the lives of their families, their communities, and most importantly, their church. And so, for example, one area where we've done great work is on our radio station. Our radio station really is one of our success stories because it is in fact led by Native people, Lakota people who are in charge of a station that is doing great service to the 20,000 listeners that are there on the reservation.
As a matter of fact, one of the things that goes on in your radio station is that you broadcast in Lakota language.
That's correct. And that's a big important part of enculturation as well. I mean, we want to enculturate within, and part of that is using the Lakota language. And that is why our emphasis on the Lakota language, both in the radio station and also eventually in the school we hope to begin, is so important. On the radio station currently, we say the Our Father, we say the Hail Mary, we say the Glory Be, all in Lakota. Because what we want to do is promote the language not only among those who actually speak it, but among the young people, the children especially, who haven't yet begun to speak it, but who we need to speak it if in fact the language and therefore the culture will survive into the future.
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, one of the things you were telling me, Father John, is that the early missionaries to Rosebud had, really been the ones to write down the first grammar and dictionary and way of writing the language. And you have that at your museum.
Right. The early missionaries who came there were German Jesuits who were thrown out of Germany by Bismarck. And when they went out to the reservation, they learned the language, they lived with the people, they took very good notes on the culture, on the religious symbols and so forth. Father Beekle actually wrote the orthography for the language and a dictionary.
Orthography means what?
The written script.
Okay, so he came up with a way to actually put the language into script.
And until that time, more or less, there was really no written history or anything. So now people could write the language as well. And so all of his notes and everything are preserved in our museum, along with a large collection of artifacts that are kept there. And we try to rotate things out as much as we can so people can see them. So people come from all over to study. Native people come to study that whole history with the attempt to revive it and so forth.
One of the, this is one of the gifts of cherishing the Lakota culture that is part of the mission. This is not something extraneous, but, it was the church that taught the Germans how to write, the Poles how to write, the French how to write, making an orthography, using the Latin one, of course, but coming up with a way to write down these languages has been part of church teaching ministry from the early Middle Ages. And you're just continuing on what the church has always been doing in its work.
Right, and one of the important things to say is that Deacon Ben Blackbear Jr. has been working on translating the New Testament into a new orthography that's simpler and easier to understand. He's been working with a group of scholars, and he's done the Gospel of Luke, is halfway through John. It's going to be a tremendous benefit to people to have the scriptures, but also he's working on how to teach kids the language in a better way. So if we get a school going, that we hope to be able to, that the kids would know how to read, write, and speak the language.
Sure. Now, in addition to helping bring the Catholic faith into an authentic Lakota culture so that the faith really has a home in the culture and also lifts up the best parts of that culture. That's always been another aspect of the church's work, to take what's in the culture, like the Christmas tree is an example of something from German culture that was brought by the church and made into a symbol of Christmas around the world. Besides that work, you're also addressing some of the problems. You mentioned before alcoholism. What is the mission doing to address some of that issue?
Well, when I first went there 8 years ago, I had previously worked in the bishop's office and did basically a study of the reservations, basically what people need, what do they want. So when I went there, I knew that there were some things we had to do. The first one was to reinstitute a religious education program for kids.
All right.
We now have 400 kids a week we're seeing. When I went there were 16 kids coming to release time. The second piece was to get in a big way into recovery issues. So we set up 2 aftercare recovery centers. They're not in-house programs, but we see people who have come out of a 30-day program. And we partnered with the Betty Ford Institute in Rancho Mirage. And for California.
Yes.
And they sent out a counselor to teach our folks how to do their family recovery program. And now my staff, once a month, does this family recovery program. It was so successful that the president of the tribe, Rodney Bordeaux, gave administrative leave to anyone who works in the tribe to come to this. And it's been a successful piece. Now we hope to move into, and we think we have it lined up now, to be able to address the terrible suicide issue on the reservation.
What is the suicide problem?
Oh, it's a huge problem. 2 years ago, in the small town of Parmalee, they had 5 young people commit suicide within a 2-month period. At the same time, we had 5 kids in the hospital attempted at the same community, and we had 5 kids in psychiatric hospitals around the state. This is a community of 800 people.
So out of the 800 people,
there were 15 people affected by it. 5 succeeded.
5 successes and 10 who were recovering from having failed to commit suicide.
And 2 years later, we had 3 more, and we sort of went through the pattern again. So this has been a terrible issue on the reservation. And I've been trying to address it for several years. But I think now we're at a point where we have someone who is knowledgeable, who has the expertise, who can set up a program whereby the mission can actually reach out and be effective. It's extremely important, I think.
So this becomes really a matter of helping to save life.
That's exactly what it is. And the recovery program and the suicide prevention program, and now also a dental clinic, which we're trying to open.
Why a dental clinic?
Well, it's the Kellogg Foundation just did a study on Pine Ridge, the neighboring reservation, about the oral health on that reservation. It was devastating. Devastating. Kids who have chronic oral disease are not seen. On our reservation, there's one dentist for 20,000 people. Guess what he does? He pulls teeth because that's what he has time to do, you know. So I look at these
Whereas a lot of those teeth could be cared for and saved if there were more dentists who could help out.
And as everyone knows, if you don't address oral health, you're asking for big problems down the road.
Right.
And so when I look at this kind of an issue, the dental thing, the suicide thing, the alcohol and drug recovery thing, these are humanitarian crises that we deal with there. I mean, they're epidemic. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're Catholic or Protestant. I feel the church, when we see that kind of disease and hurt, the church must respond to it.
Yes.
We don't have a choice not to.
Right.
And that's why I feel we have to get into this.
Yeah, yeah.
And you may say, well, it's not strictly evangelization. Well, it's bringing the church, the Christ, to the hurting Christ, and that's what we do.
Right.
You know.
Right. And you know, one of the things that I don't know that we could isolate that from evangelization. I mean, if people are dying because they're committing suicide, I mean, and there's, you know, a lot of hopelessness. You know, part of the gospel is to bring them hope. There's something like a very high unemployment rate, isn't there not?
Terrible.
Yeah, about what, 85% is what I heard.
80 or 85%, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, and that's one of the other things. You know, what kind of jobs can they get? What else do you find yourself doing while you're at the mission, Tom?
Well, again, my primary role at the mission is to spend time on the road traveling to meet with and personally thank our most faithful donors and benefactors throughout the country. And that has me spending a great majority of my time both preparing for those visits but also actually going to make these visits. Mm-hmm. And for me that's a real honor and pleasure, because for me to be able to look at someone, sit with them in their home, for example, and say thank you so much for supporting us. Most of these folks don't have any personal link to the reservation. Unlike our high school, our wonderful high school, Jesuit high schools and colleges,
yeah,
we don't
a lot
have
of times
alumni.
It's the graduates
Exactly.
who are supporting the schools.
Right. So I refer to our donors' generosity as gratuitous generosity, because they are giving to us because they realize the importance of our work, but they themselves have never stepped foot on and perhaps never will step foot on our reservation. And so I am blown away by the generosity of our donors, and I tell each and every one of them that without them, we could not do what we do. We could not deal with the hope deficit that you were referring to earlier. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that's what we're in the business of dealing with ultimately, dealing with the hope deficit by dealing with the short-term issues and the short-term problems, but also building for the future. And that's why the school that we're trying to raise money for is so important, because without a future generation of educated folks to actually curb the high unemployment, to bring entrepreneurial opportunity onto the reservation, to get into positions of leadership, people who are thoroughly Lakota, but also driven for positive change, we're going to continue to deal with a hope deficit.
Right.
And that inspires our donors, and they continue to want to give. And my job, my role, is to simply say to them, thank you. A very Ignatian thing, gratitude.
But see, this is one of the things where, you know, the faith component, that you're talking about how important it is to teach the catechism, to translate the Bible into Lakota, to have programs where you're praying in Lakota on the radio and getting this out to people all over the reservation. One of the things that we see St. Paul say is that Christ is our hope. And you're trying to bring Christ into the center of this situation so that he can be the hope that they have.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, the whole piece that we try to do in everything we do is to talk about Christ and his role in our ministry. So we're not going to separate out what might be considered social work from the faith work. We do all of this in an integrated way. And that's what the new mission is about. We are very much bringing the gospel of Jesus to people. And we do that by teaching it, but we also do it by the actions that we take. And some people will be attracted to become Catholic. Many will be attracted to go back to the Episcopal Church or the Presbyterian Church. Many people who are not Christian will go back to the traditional faith, religion that they had.
Right.
But our point is, unless God is present, we're going to have real trouble. We know that of the 20,000 people on this reservation, 43% of them are 18 years of age or younger. Isn't that amazing?
43%.
Yes.
Are
Almost
18
half.
and younger. That's way disproportionate.
And we know from a study by the juvenile court system that they have no religious center. They're not Catholic. I mean, they're baptized, but they're not Catholic, they're not Protestant, they're not traditional Lakota. And what you have as a result of that, you have a lot of lost people who gather in gangs or other ways for protection, but they have no direction. When Brother Douglas goes into the juvenile detention center, and that's where he works, he does counseling, but he also brings the gospel, and we have some Jesuit volunteers who go in there and do that too. These kids are glued to what they're being told. It's like they've just been taught how to pray. We just teach, how do you pray? You know?
Yeah.
These kids are hungry for something, and we can bring that to them, by word and example. And I think it's a tremendous mission field out there for us, but we need to do that. That's what we're doing, is bringing the gospel, bringing the church, and that's what we do.
And again, it's with the view that the church will be something, the church is meant to be self-sustaining. You know, the church is meant to be a reality that grows. It's that leaven in the lump of dough. It's the mustard seed that grows into a big church. Right. And that is what still needs to go on in this community. Absolutely.
And so part of it has the evangelization piece. How do you bring Catholics that don't know anything about the church back into this piece? You have to do education, prayer training, and so forth. But the other thing is, I often teach, in the programs I teach on mission, if you do something for someone that you can teach them how to do it, you've done a disservice to the native church. In other words, if you want Eucharistic ministers, if I go out as a priest and do all of that work and never bring in native people to help do that, I've done a disservice to them. So many people come.
Why is that?
Well, because so many people come to the reservation wanting to do for native people. And they do a wonderful job. Let's just take music, for instance. Someone will come and know how to play the piano and sing. They'll sing at all the masses and all the things and do all the stuff that needs to be done. When they leave, you have no one trained to do it.
In other words, they play the music, but they don't teach the Lakota people how to play the music themselves.
So you've not done anything here to advance the church.
Right, right.
So everything you do has to be to build up that leadership.
And part of it is, if we look at the history of missionary activity in the church, what has happened in Africa, what has happened in India. What's really interesting right now in the West River Diocese, the Rapid City Diocese,
of South Dakota,
okay, is that there are a couple of priests, one or two from Uganda, which means that the African church has done its job, mission accomplished to those missionaries, because they've actually established a native church that is literally and figuratively rooted within the native soil, so much so that African churches are now able to send forth from themselves missionaries to re-evangelize us in South Dakota. The point of the mission, the point of St. Francis' mission, is to permit that same kind of church to organically grow, so that in some case, someday in the future, we not only have native deacons, but native priests, native religious, and ultimately a native bishop who can send a Lakota priest to a new mission field.
Right, right.
And that's the point.
That's the point.
Yeah. See, that's one of the things that is always the church's goal. You know, we've done this with the barbarians who invaded Europe back in the so-called Dark Ages. And, you know, we've done it in Africa. We've done it, you know, in Asia. But it hasn't yet happened in the Native American situation.
Anywhere in North America.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
I think Archbishop Chaput is the only Native American who is in the hierarchy.
Right now, yes.
Yeah.
Bishop Palat was, of course, but he passed away.
Right.
So Archbishop Chaput is the only one.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that, you know, we need to see this develop more clergy. Are there any clergy from the Lakota people at the reservation?
Well, Deacon Ben Blackberry is the only one.
Okay.
Right now. There are two other Lakota deacons from that reservation, but they live in Rapid City. So Deacon Blackberry is the only one ministering there on the reservation right now. We have 7 commissioned lay ministers who are also working in various aspects of the mission or working in the parishes. And there are about 7 who are now retired. So we had a fairly large number of lay ministry people. And we keep trying to keep nourishing that and getting it to grow.
Right.
So it's interesting.
Well, it sounds like the work has a revitalized future. I mean, it's got a long history already, but it looks like it's got a revitalized future of, you know, and direction to where you want it to go. And one last point, you also are doing a lot of work on family, because family breakdown is very serious in the reservation. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'll just say a few things. Well, one of the things is that especially with the recovery programs, we've really stressed the family recovery program. So in that program, we don't deal primarily with the person who is the alcoholic as we do with the family of the alcoholic. So when they come back from treatment, the family understands what's happening and the dynamic. We've also done a lot of work on improving our preparation for sacraments. So right now, for a parent to have a child baptized, they come to 4 consecutive Thursday nights. We have a little dinner, some talk, sometimes elders come in and speak. The following Sunday, they have to come to the masses. And so it's, again, a family affair. We teach this with maybe 10 or 15 families coming together.
And working with the families goes to the holistic nature of the mission itself. You have to deal with the whole unit, and of course the family is the basic unit of any society, and so we need to deal with the whole family. And as we look again toward the future, we're also going to employ that same mentality and model to the school. The nativity modeled school, one of its tenets is high parental involvement. So that we are involving not only the children in terms of getting them a first-class education that's going to prepare them for college and ultimately for their future, but we're also going to be working with the family. And we're going to be expecting of the families to make a couple of commitments. Number one, to, yes, the education of their children, but also to recovery. We're going to ask them to enroll in one of our recovery programs. And in addition to that, we're going to encourage our families to attend Mass on a weekly basis. In fact, the name of the school will be Sapun. And I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly in Lakota, but close enough. But what it literally means is black robe. And black robe is equivalent to Catholic. So what we're in effect establishing is literally Catholic school, which means we have to work with the whole family in addition to just simply the children themselves.
Yes, it's very important. Yeah.
Great. Well, it sounds like great work is going on. We need to take a break. We're going to come back in a couple minutes. And if you have some questions and comments for our guests tonight about their work in the Lakota Sioux Reservation, please call in, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes. Thank you and welcome back. First of all, I'd like to let you know how you can get more information on the St. Francis mission to the Lakota Sioux Native people. You can contact them at St. Francis Mission. That's Post Office Box 499, P.O. Box 499. And that's at St. Francis, South Dakota, SD, and the zip code is 57572. 57572. Also, they've got a phone number that you can call, and that's at 605-747-2361. That's 605-747-2361. The website is www.sfmission.org. www.sfmission.org. Also, if you would like to be part of our studio audience, we would love to have you. It's nice weather here today, a little nip in the air, a little crisp, but it was a very pretty day today. And we'd love to have you as part of our studio audience if you can come down here to be with us. You can contact our pilgrimage department by calling them at 205-271-2966, 205-271-2966, or go to our website, www.ewtn.com. They'll help you with all kinds of information about where you can stay, scheduling for the masses, programs, tours of the network, information on how to get out to Hansville to see the sisters at the Shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament. All of that they'll do for you, and we'd love to have you here with our studio audience. So please come on down. Are you ready for some questions?
Yes.
All right, let's start off with a call. We have Lorraine on the line. Hello, Lorraine.
Hi, Father Mitch.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Where are you calling from?
Tampa, Florida.
Great. And what's your question?
I just want to say I really enjoy your shows, Father Mitch, and I learned so much from you.
Thank you.
But my question is, what percentage of the Lakota people are actually Catholic?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. What percentage? Because now, one of the things, just to help with that question, though, is your mission is not the only Lakota mission.
Right.
And it's not the only Lakota reservation.
Right.
There are different reservations, but about what percentage of the Lakota people are Catholic?
Well, first of all, I want to say I graduated from Jesuit High School in Tampa.
Oh, that's
So-
right, you did, didn't you?
She's calling from home.
Yeah.
The Lakota people on our reservation, there are 20,000 people. 40% of them are baptized Catholic.
40%.
And I would say that number is probably, from the research I did before when I worked in the bishop's office, that's probably a pretty safe number for all 5 of those reservations.
Okay, so that's actually higher than the national average
Yes,
for the United States. The national average is just under 25%.
Right.
So this is about 40% Catholic.
Right.
And then the others would be
The next
Episcopalians.
largest would be Episcopalian, because they were there first, and they have a large community, especially on Pine Ridge. They have a large community. And then we would talk about Presbyterians, some Baptists, some few Baptists, some Pentecostal religions, and then the native pipe religion.
Okay, okay. All right. Now I have a question here from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona.
Great, good to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Father. I'm originally from South Dakota, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing there. My question is, I'm a Lakota, I'm on the reservation, I'm participating in the recovery program, attending Mass, and I'm looking at the unemployment, and what do I do? Where's my hope going forward? Do I stay on the reservation, or is there some place for me to go when I come out?
Well, I think that right now, if you can maintain sobriety and have the necessary education pieces that you need, there are enough jobs available that you can probably get work and hold that job. Because it's very hard to find people who are consistent in the workplace. A lot of people work for a few weeks and then they're away again. So that, in a certain sense, there are a number of jobs that are available for that type of situation. Down the road, we have to talk about the education piece. This nativity model school, getting people into professional schools, getting people back, that would make a big difference. One of the things that's interesting, actually there are 2 things I want to say. One is we have the latest technology on the reservation. You have T1 lines. You could have all kinds of online businesses if you had an educated populace to do that. So it's possible.
There are more opportunities than have been used so far.
Can be developed. And in fact, the present tribal government is doing its best to open up new areas where people could work. I mean, they're doing a lot of work trying to get outside businesses and so forth. What we have to do is provide an educated, stable workforce. And that would be part of what our plan would be. And part of that stability is getting people sober and getting them to be reliable in those areas. Mm-hmm. I don't, did you want to say something more about that? I mean, I think that's where we are. I'm very concerned. I mean, what I would really like to do in the next few years is to get some of our universities, who have business schools, to say, well, we'll help you. We'll get our senior classes to develop business models and work to train people how to run small businesses. I think that'd be a great combination of bringing the Jesuit universities and the Jesuit missions together. Sure. We're going to work with them on the Creighton Dental School that wants to send their students out in the summers,
Creighton is one of the Jesuit universities
in Omaha, and they have a large dental school. So that would be an area where we can cooperate. Well, we could cooperate with the business school. We could cooperate with their departments of psychology if we get this suicide prevention thing going. So I'm looking for how do we partner with other institutions and partner with the tribe to make it happen and make work happen.
Yeah, so that there are opportunities not only for the Lakota people, but also opportunities, that really let them open up options for the university people.
Right, right.
Yeah,
we can do that, yeah.
We have another caller on the line. Hello, Jerry? Jerry, you there?
Yes, I am, Father. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you.
Where are you from?
I want to say thank you for your work there on EWTN.
Oh, my pleasure.
I need to mention that I'm Lakota and Polish.
Nice. Now that is, I would love to see the kielbasa you come up with.
I don't think you want to taste it.
Oh, I don't know. Try me. I mean, I've made deer kielbasa myself.
Well, that's the 13th language for you to learn, Father. I know you speak 12, so there
Right.
you go. Learn Lakota.
All right, I'll have to try that, Jerry. Where are you from, by the way?
I'm right now calling from Jacksonville, Florida. I was originally born in Valentine, Nebraska. I have Lakota relatives on the Rosebud by the name of Small Bear. But I wanted to ask Father, the two fathers, the Black Robes, about my grandson, rather, showing interest in doing some kind of missionary work. He's in college now here in Jacksonville, Florida. And I told him I would begin to explore some possibilities, and right away, because we send money to the St. Francis missionary, that I thought to call Father Hatcher, and this has worked out so beautifully tonight that you have him as a guest. So how, if you might pass my question along, can someone who would like to come and spend some time maybe in social services, some missionary kind of work, how do they go about that?
That's a great question.
Well, I think that what you do is contact me, as you were going to do, send me the information or have the person themselves contact me, and then we can talk about what are the possibilities and how they could help and fit into the various programs that we're doing. I think I've mentioned there are some things that are developing now that could be real possibilities for the future. So in the social area, the whole business of working with the suicide program, prevention program, could be a real possibility. Working with the school, if we get it underway, we're going to need people who are going to outreach and work with families. And those people have to have a certain amount of training and expertise to do that. If you're a dentist, call me up. We can have volunteer dentists come out and work on teeth. That's what we're going to be doing. So there are a lot of opportunities. One of the things, though, I want to say as a caution, a lot of people want to come and do, as I said earlier, for Native people. And so I try to discourage groups who want to come out and paint buildings or fix porches and do stuff like that, because I feel it's important that the people themselves take responsibilities for those issues. Whereas if I have people who have expertise, who can fit into programs and want to do something, especially to train someone to do something, I'm really happy to talk to those kinds of people. So,
in this kind of case, it would be an example of what you were talking about before, of somebody who is himself Lakota, part Lakota.
Right. That'd be
actually
be valuable, very valuable. For
actually be helping that Lakota church to develop and grow.
Absolutely.
Of Lakota, ministering to Lakota and making that Native church a very real vitality.
Right. So one of the things that could happen is if that person would look at our website and see the number of things that we're doing, you might find things that would interest him to work on.
Sure. And there'd be other folks who might want to do the same kind of thing. Like you say, dentists.
Yeah.
You are looking for dentists, to help, and maybe even some dentists who could come and train dental hygienists on the reservation, because that's going to be one of the things you're going to need.
Right, sure. There are a lot of possibilities that way.
Yeah.
A lot of possibilities.
One of the questions that I got, the person didn't want to stay on the line, but a question that was brought in: why are there still Native American reservations? Is this some attempt to keep the Native Americans separated, or why does the reservation system still exist, and why isn't there more of an integration of Native Americans into the rest of the society?
Well, at least the history of the Lakota people, the Great Sioux Reservation at one point ran from the Missouri River all the way to the Powder River in Wyoming, and far north into part of North Dakota and part of Nebraska, down to Fort Robinson.
So it was a huge
reservation.
Area.
When gold was discovered in the Black Hills, miners went in there, and then Colonel Custer was sent in to make the peace there. And it violated the treaty that had been made with the people.
Again.
This stuff, that reservation, that big chunk of land was to be set aside forever for this group of people. And ultimately, after Custer was killed, Congress took that property back and put folks on much reduced reservation land.
And in one sense, you know, once a valuable mineral that could have been developed by the Native Americans themselves on their own land, once that's discovered, you know, all bets are off. And,
That's right.
And the treaty means nothing for the sake of the gold.
Now, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled several years ago that that was done illegally, and they did set aside an amount of money to be reimbursed to the Sioux for it. But the Lakota people will not accept that because they really want title to some of that land back.
Right.
And so it's been a long story of how we as a people co-opted property. Even with the Dawes Act, where they opened up reservation land for to be bought by non-natives. That was sort of a gizmo, because the way that was set up was each male was given a certain amount of property. And then the government said, well, all this other land isn't being used, so we'll open it up to farmers and ranchers to come in. So that reduced the reservation further. That's why you have this huge checkerboard out there with jurisdiction problems that you can't believe.
Right.
So there's no point in criticizing who did what when. The question is, how do we go forward here and make it possible for these people to have a life that is, you know, livable?
Exactly.
And have something to give. And how does the church approach them in a way to say, we want your gift of culture. I mean, the second person of the Trinity created this culture. There's stuff in there the second person wants us to know about God that's unique.
Right.
And we as a church have to say to Lakota people, we really want you to bring this gift to us.
Right.
To teach us.
Right.
And once people get that idea that they can do that, then they will begin to have a strong church, I think.
We have another caller on the line. Hello, Colleen.
Yes, good evening, Father.
Hi.
And good evening to your guests also.
Where are you from?
I'm from New Jersey.
Great. And what's your question?
My question is, I just was wondering which of the native teachings, the native Lakota teachings, are honored within the practice of Catholicism. I mean, I know the drum is very sacred to them, the sacred dances. And is the Mass done in Lakota?
Unfortunately, no one knows how to speak Lakota, but we do have the Mass translated into Lakota.
So you could you say the Mass in Lakota?
Not in the present form that it's in, but Ben Blackbear, once again, is putting this in a simpler orthography, and he will teach us how to do this so that we could do it. You know.
So this is going to be one of the things that there will be more Lakota in the liturgy.
Right. And we also do a lot of, now we're doing some of the drumming in the liturgy. We do we often do the four directions prayer and the smudging at the liturgy. So more and more things are being incorporated as Native people want to incorporate it. It's important that we as non-natives don't appropriate those things, but encourage them to do what they feel they want to do.
Right, right. This is going to be one of the things. We've got some video of the liturgical celebration and, you know, of Mass, people coming for communion, and there'll be some things that they will want to bring into the liturgy that makes sense. And part of it, too, it sounds to me as if the more they understand their Catholicism through catechesis, the more they will be able to see themselves the good sense of their native practices being incorporated into the faith, so that it's not just slapping a sandwich, but it really is an integration.
Right. That's right. See, when Archbishop Chaput was the Bishop of Rapid City, he set up a task force of Native people from all 5 reservations, myself in theology, Father Ray Bucko in anthropology, and then from time to time we bring in an expert in liturgy. For 10 years we met twice a year with that group, and we went systematically through the Mass, through baptism rites, confirmation rites, marriage rites, funeral rites, and we worked on what from their perspective they would like to share, and from the church's perspective how it could be used. And that was all approved piece by piece by him and by the Bishop's Ad Hoc Committee on Native American Catholics. And after 10 years, we now have a pretty good idea that the work we did was solid. I mean, we didn't just pull stuff out of the air and say, well, today we're going to do this.
Oh, this fits here and this fits here.
That's crazy. That's not enculturation. That's nuts.
No.
So we did it very deliberately, very carefully. And so people now have a confidence that when they use these things, this is expressing their Lakota Catholicism, which is an extremely important thing.
And one of the things that people need to also understand, just because the Lakota can do this, that doesn't mean that these same liturgies would then apply to other Native Americans, because they have their own distinctive cultures.
That's right.
Cherokee culture is not Lakota culture.
Very different.
Hopi culture is totally different.
That's right.
Navajo culture. Each one of them must be respected on its own terms.
And you don't want to, and also you don't want to get into this pan-Indianism.
Right.
It's crazy. The Bishops' Conference with the Ad Hoc Committee and now the Committee on Diversity encourages other dioceses that have large Native populations to begin the same kind of discussion so that they too can develop over time things that they feel confident in.
Right.
And that's where you have to go.
Exactly.
It's a serious business. It's a thorny business. I mean, you have to really respect both sides and figure out how to make this work. And once you do that hard work, then you have good confidence in what's happening.
Let's go to another caller. I have Rosario on the line. Hello, Rosario.
Yes, hi, Father Pacwa.
How are you? Where are you from?
I'm from Long Beach, California.
Great. And what's your question?
My question is the high rate of alcoholism, how can we alleviate that problem, being that alcohol being sold on the reservation or outside the reservation?
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, the short answer you don't want to hear, but I think that the alcoholism is a very difficult piece. And on the reservations, for the most part, it is illegal, although on Rosebud it is illegal. It's legal in 2 places, so you've got that going for you.
So except for 2 places, it's not legal to sell alcohol on the reservation. What
you have is a lot of bootleggers who bring stuff on.
That's the problem.
You've got to have good enforcement to get that done. And
we have the same problem here in Alabama.
You know, I know. So I mean, you know, it's a complicated question. Part of it is doing much more with young kids on alcohol prevention. And so part of the program that we have for aftercare is actually to move into how to teach people about alcoholism. You know, an interesting thing happened when the Betty Ford outfit came out to start teaching. Everything was on these PowerPoint presentations. Unintelligible, this thing on how alcohol treats the brain, you know. Well, Lakota people on our staff took that and made a play out of it, which makes it crystal clear. And we can do that in the juvenile detention center, we can do that in the schools, and kids begin to catch on that it's not simply taking a drink, it's really killing your brain, you know. And so that kind of education needs to be a big part of overcoming this problem, I think.
Yeah, that's, and you know, it's not that Native Americans have greater moral weakness that makes them alcoholics. There's also some physiological problems that Native Americans, you know, don't digest alcohol the way some other people, like Mediterranean people, have very low alcoholism rate because of the way they metabolize alcohol. Whereas some people have a greater preponderance of it, and this is one of the problems in the Native American population.
And my Irish ancestors.
Yeah, well, Western Europeans and Northern Europeans have the same problem.
The thing is, with alcohol, is that if you get started on this business down the road as an alcoholic and you're really caught, it changes the physiology of the brain, and then that physiology is passed on to the next generation, and so you keep going. So you have to reverse that pattern, and it is reversible, I think, and but again, it's the education piece that's so important.
Right. It sounds like it's good. I want to give the information one more time before we go tonight. It's St. Francis Mission, and it is at Post Office Box 499, St. Francis, South Dakota. That's 57572. And the phone number is 605-747-2361. 605-747-2361. Website is www.sfmission.org. And you can contact them, talk about volunteering, see what you can contribute, and help build up that church. I want to thank both of you for being with me tonight. And I brought something special for the three of us. I have relics of three of our Jesuit saints. Saint Andrzej Babula, a Polish martyr, but more to the point, Saint Jean Brebeuf was martyred by the Iroquois, and Saint Isaac Jogues also martyred by the Iroquois. May Almighty God bless you, and by the saints Isaac Jogues and Jean Brebeuf, fill you with his love, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
And you know, we want to remind you that this network is brought to you by you. We can bring you these guests and talk about this exciting work in the missions because you make this network possible. So please keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill, and we'll be able to pay our bills. Thank you.